Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
I love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Ags. David Nuño here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Liucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin, Buchanan.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
I think we're coming into this year with a new confidence.
Schools are like, we're freaking Texas A&M, man. Like,
that's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
You had no other option but one hand at that point.
Yeah, man, 50-50 ball, I got to come down with it.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Couldn't have asked for a worse Sunday. I guess you could have, but let's see. Texas is in the playoffs. Okay, that's not good. They're coming to the SEC. Elijah Robinson is going to Syracuse to be their defensive coordinator, taking maybe a chunk of the 22 class, going to be leaving as well. Decommits, portal, you know the game. Obviously, I am worried about what is happening. Got to be worried about it. Like, you have to be. But this was inevitable, and it was inevitable before Jimbo Fisher was fired. This was in the works a long time ago. They had no hope. I think Mike Elko was hired to save this as much as possible. We're going to get into that. Not ideal. They're going to lose some, but they're going to gain some here. Looks like Sean Spencer is going to come in with a very similar reputation to be the defensive line coach, bringing in some of his guys as well, I would assume. Not ideal. So now they got to act fast, figure out who the defensive coordinator is going to be, figure out the portal strategy, which I know Mike Elko's got a plan for that as well. And, by the way, we got a bowl game to talk about. All that on this episode of TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio, Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. David Nuño, Olin Buchanan, our Heisman Trophy voter. Sunday sucked.
It did. And plus, on top of all that, you just mentioned a Heisman Trophy voter, and they sent the email where you can vote, but they had all the Deloitte and Touche, that does all that. They had all these steps.
You're not good with steps on a computer, right?
Well, I actually called in my wife, who is, and there were all these problems with it. So I spent over an hour and a half calling people at Deloitte and Touche, okay, or however you say it, and eventually they just said, look, we're going to –
just take yours on the phone?
Well, they said, we're going to send you a link that allows you just to vote. I'm like, why don't you do that? Anyway, so I eventually voted. Can't say who, but I eventually voted, but it should have taken 10 minutes.
Took over an hour.
An hour and a half. So anyway, but yes, that was the least of the issues.
I'm out of curiosity. Do you know how to mirror from your phone to a computer or to a television?
Oh, of course not.
Okay. I'm just techie things.
You can do stuff like you. Yeah, I can put something on my phone and
it can be right up there.
No.
So do not go to your browser history because I don't want to see what's up there. But yes, we could do that. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
Because you couldn't have asked.
No. It was like, I think Nick said that it was like getting punched in the gut or the nether regions over and over.
It can get worse. It can absolutely get worse. But it felt like as bad. Like, it was just like one thing after another.
But, I kind of, we talked about the possibility of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going to start with if you retained or not Elijah Robinson, which you could not do for various reasons. I understand the thinking on both sides. But
people, the interesting part for Elijah is we all see it through the A&M perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, as we should. Humans have their own likes, desires, like, you know what, I'm ready for a change, or I really want to be a DC now. I think I'm ready. I got a taste of the good life as a head coach. I got to take the next step. He's got his reasons, and I wish him well. He was great.
I would suspect that there are those at Channel 13 in Houston that were saying, David, what are you thinking?
Oh, they're still saying it.
Oh. And yet you've made the decision that was best for you to come here.
100%.
Well, Elijah Robinson says, hey, I want to be the defensive coordinator right now. I I don't know what was going on between him and Mike Elko. I know that he had been offered Billy put out that he'd been offered like
$1.7 million
over 5 years.
Yeah, the highest non-coordinator in college football,
right.
highest paid.
And quite frankly, I wonder how much he's going to get paid as a defensive coordinator at Syracuse. And then start factoring in that crazy taxes
it's getting more expensive. Yeah.
So,
but he wanted to do it.
But he wants to do it. That's best for him. Maybe if he stays here, maybe you're not defensive coordinator, but you're getting groomed by one of the best defensive minds in the game.
Right.
But but he said no. But I think I'm ready. And maybe you're not. Whatever. He did what he felt like was best for him. And I understand that.
Doesn't it make you think?
And I have no ill will for him.
Doesn't it make you think that, Billy put out some news that Tyler Santucci's not coming with A&M? Obviously, Elijah's not going to be here anymore. That Elko's maybe thinking of a big fish for that position?
I think he probably knows who's it's going to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably some loose ends to tie up before it's announced. I mean, I don't know this. This is what I suspect. And I don't know if it's a big fish in terms of a national name that everybody's going, oh, my God, or if it's just somebody that Mike Elko says, yeah, I know this guy. And maybe not everybody does, but I know him, and I like what he's about. Now,
sure.
If you come back and says, hey, it's that Iowa defensive coordinator or the guy that used to be at Wisconsin, Jim Leonard,
right?
Everybody's going, oh, my gosh. I'm not saying it's that. All right, don't get, TexAgers don't react. I'm just throwing out some names that what if it was. But it's going to be somebody that Mike Elko feels confident in.
I have a friend who's a high school football coach in Texas who reached out to me yesterday before Elijah was leaving. And he said, hey, if Elijah leaves, keep an eye out on Sean Spencer. That guy is money.
Well, let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
So Luke Evangelist prepares a show packet for us this morning. Couple things about Sean Spencer, the new co-DC defensive line coach. He was at Florida, now at Texas A&M. Nickname, according to Twitter, Coach Chaos.
He's in the right place.
I love when the defensive line causes chaos. Recruited Coach Micah Parsons at Penn State. He was their D-line coach from 2014 to 2017.
That's all I needed to hear right there.
Ooh. I love Micah Parsons, by the way.
He's a hell of a football player.
I just like his personality.
Mm-hmm.
2018-2019, the associate head coach and defensive line coach, went to the New York Giants as their defensive line coach. Run defense was top 10 in yards, TDs, and yards per rush in 1 year as a DL coach. Then with the Gators, 22-23, obviously was let go recently. In 2023, coming to Texas A&M.
Yeah, that strikes me as
just trying to.
There's got to be scapegoats.
Yep.
When you're failing as a head coach, you got to have scapegoats. So I don't know if that's the case or not. I like the Coach Chaos moniker. I hope it fits here.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's in the right place.
Isn't there a Captain Chaos somewhere?
I think there was something on some cartoon.
Yeah, I know you're a big cartoon guy.
I actually do like cartoons.
So here's the deal. We're all we're taking jabs, we're taking some uppercuts, we're getting hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know what the beauty of everything is? The portal works both ways. It's not just like you lose. Okay, you lose, but I think there's a new strategy across the street, and Billy's reported that. They're going to be more aggressive, which means, and new coaches brings new people, and sometimes you got to switch it up what's over there.
Hey, Aggies, how bad, Aggies who are hearing my voice or watching us on YouTube or the CW or whatever, how bad do you want the Aggies to be successful? Because
tell me more.
You might have to get into your wallet.
That's a big wallet.
Somebody tell me.
How many credit cards and hotel keys do you have?
I got my whole life in here. I'm ready. Here, somebody tell me if you want to contribute to an NIL fund, and you're just the common guy.
Yeah.
How do you do about it?
But you know what? It ain't going anywhere.
Nobody's more common than I am.
But I hate the NIL. I hate the whole thing. I hate it. I want players to get paid, but I hate it.
Embrace it and learn to love it because it's not leaving. So you don't want to be like the coach that says, no, I'm not going to do it, and then he gets left behind.
Right.
Like it's almost like if you had a crappy offense and you refuse to change it, and then you're wondering why you're not successful. So so you got to embrace the NIL.
You got to embrace the suck.
You got to say, hey, this is how life is now. There are problems.
I don't have to. I can hate it because I'm not. I'm just saying. I don't. Was it you guys? I think it was you guys talking about it yesterday on the Luchador, which I wasn't a part of. Billy kicked me out. But kidding. I was out of town with the family, which much needed time away with my boys. But that it's not going to change. But was it your idea that it should go back to the way it used to be, which was, all right, if you're going to transfer, sit out a year? Because with NIL, I think that would stop people from just, all right, I'm leaving. Bye.
Yeah, to a certain degree. But, yeah, it's not going to change. So, that goes back to the massive failing of Mark Emmert when he was head of the NCAA, and all he did was collect a paycheck. And that's what they still do. Look. You know who does NIL well? You know who does it great?
Down the road?
Texas.
Yep.
Texas does it great. Mm-hmm. So you can, you always want to beat Texas on the field? Well, beat them in NIL. Because that's just the reality of college football now.
Chase in Houston on the text line said, if you want to text, you can do it. 979-693-11.
But you got to be smart with it.
How you text?
No, with the NIL.
Yeah, you got to be smart. He says, I love my best friend to death, but no way I'm following him to coach football at Syracuse. Look,
this is more about not being with your best friend. I think it's more about the opportunity to take the next step in your career.
And when you are a millionaire, you can take steps like that.
I would not know. I would assume you're correct.
Yeah, but look. People have their own desires in life. You don't, and by the way, we all have different seasons in life. There's certain times that you want this for your life. There are certain times you want this for your family. We all go through it different ways.
Yeah, seasons in life.
Like
I don't know if I'm at the end of autumn or at the beginning of winter.
Well,
I don't know if I'm at the end of winter. We never know.
It was not a good Sunday. It was a red wedding.
It was a bad Sunday.
Yeah.
Bad Sunday.
Bad Sunday. You know what's good? Our listeners, our viewers, most of them, 97%. We did a poll. Most of them are great. If you want to be part of the conversation, text us 979-693-1150. If you call us, we'll pick it up there on the Brian Foley Law hotline. Good people can have a bad day. Call Brian Foley Law, 936-596-0407, serving Houston, the Woodlands, Conroe, and the Brazos Valley. Let's go say hi to the people. Another nice young man. His name is Nick Savage. Good morning, Nick.
Howdy, good morning, y'all.
Appreciate
that kind intro, David.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I know y'all are going to break this down a little bit later, but I'm going to take it to the college football playoff rankings. And, the ACC getting left out, Florida State getting left out, obviously. And more people other than me have made this point. I'm just harping on it a little bit more. Is we could have had that 12-team playoff this year, but in 2022, the alliance, the three conferences, ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, all voted down the expansion until 2024. So, Florida State, while I think they should have been in, they kind of did this to themselves, in my opinion.
But I don't think they represent the ACC. They're trying to get out. They want to get out, and they definitely want to get out right now, by the way, even though it's just a flawed system. Yes. It's a flaw, and it was always flawed. It just took this.
Never should have had you tell me when a committee ever does well.
Committees have meetings, and they talk, and
You know what pisses me off? There's always, 1,000 things, but so you got this committee, and there's always talking about money and this and that. They meet, every week in a fanciest hotel in the Dallas area, one of them, if not. They're eating... Yeah, I want to go too. They're eating these catered meals and taking care every week.
Lobster.
Probably.
Dom Perignon.
Probably. And you got to fly. And who's flying them in? It's all on.
That's money.
Right. And so they can live lavishly. And when all you need to do is go back to the computers, which a lot of people are against that, but at least the computer, there's no human bias.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me there's no human bias involved?
I don't understand this part. And explain it to me. How a late loss, I get it because we're humans and we're stupid, but how a late loss matters more than an early loss.
Yeah.
Like Ohio State, I don't think they were one of the four best teams in the country. But they just lost to the number one team in the country over a week ago, right? Why are they not being discussed? Florida State won every freaking game. They did every test in front of them. What does it say to you and your conference and your team that you won every test that was put in front of you?
And they just beat the team that the committee itself said was the 14th best team in the country, and they beat them with a third-string quarterback, and they held that team, which was averaging over 30 points a game, to 6. So that's what I'm saying. There are those that say, well, unless you score 40, you're not a good football team? What about the defensive element of football? When you just went out and took a team that averages 30 points a game and held them to 6.
I think you guys were talking about this, by the way. I believe it was you. I a lot of driving yesterday coming back from Dallas. I consumed a lot of information. But what it's going to do from now on, well, not now for on, we're going to 12. But what it should have done is Florida State should have been like, we don't have a report on Jordan Travis. We just need he's day-to-day. And just done the day-to-day thing forever. And don't answer questions about the health.
Right. Someone suggested that, and I don't wish anyone to be hurt, right? But Xavier Worthy, Texas' best receiver, was hurt at the end of the game.
He's fine.
And they were saying, oh, yeah, he's fine. Well, what if he's not? He probably is fine. You know what? Quite frankly, I hope he's fine. But what if he's not fine? Well, I would say that was a brilliant move on Steve Sarkisian's part to say, well, yeah, no, he's fine.
Yeah. All right, let's check in at the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Aggies gather at the Angry Elephant. Jared Schultz there. Jared, good morning, buddy.
Good morning. I was going to talk a little bit about just kind of some bowl game stats. So overall, A&M has a 20-22 record in bowl games, and this will be the 4th time that the Aggies play in the Texas Bowl with a 2-1 record. In 2011, they beat Northwestern 33-22. That was a year right before they joined the SEC. 2016, A&M lost to K-State 33-28, and then 2019, the Aggies beat our current opponent, Oklahoma State, 24-21 in a hard-fought win. It's our 29th matchup with the Cowboys. Aggies have actually won 18 out of those 28 matchups, so they're 18-10 overall. So,
here's my problem with the Texas Bowl. I'm just ready for the season to be over, right? I want to win. I want to, enjoy the bowl week. All that. I get it, but I've already turned the page to the Mike Elko era, but this is still not the Mike Elko era, if you will.
Yeah, I think this game, this Texas Bowl, though, I think a lot of times I look at a bowl game as the end of the season. The season's over.
Yeah.
I look at this one as the first step toward the Mike Elko rebuilding project. Now, is he going to be involved on it? But he's going to be watching.
Yeah.
And he, what he's going to be saying? Who wants to play for Texas A&M?
Right.
Who's that guy who's just a natural competitor? Because if you're shutting it down, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, yeah, it's not a big-time bowl game, but this guy out here is really playing hard. I need to circle that as I move forward. So I think that's what the value of this game is. Plus, you get to the 15 practices that every coach has always said are so important, but it was so unimportant that a couple of years ago, A&M just said, well, we're not going to play.
Let's hit a break here. We're going to come back talk more about that bowl game. Bruce on the YouTube chat. Hey, Nuño, how did the soccer tournament go? It was actually a college ID showcase. And
I thought it was soccer.
It was soccer. Yeah. With college coaches walking around. I don't know if anybody was watching. I mean, I saw some coaches there for my boys' game, but they played very well. So thank you for asking, Bruce. I know that your son loves to do a little Muay Thai and kickboxing as well. Let's hit a break here, OB. When we come back, we will talk about a little bit more in depth about the bowl game. You know where I have a meeting on tomorrow?
Yeah.
You know where I have my meeting?
At Fargo's.
Is it just because we talk Fargo's at this point, or did I tell you?
You told me last week.
Okay, yeah.
Remember, because I said, is it a meeting? Is it M-E-A-T-I-N-G?
Yeah.
But that's a great place to go for a meeting.
Especially on a Tuesday?
Yeah, because, is it with a client? I don't know. But if it is, you're going to want to put them in a good mood.
I'm going to put them drunk, meat drunk.
Yeah, who's ever in a bad mood if they're having good food?
They're not.
Good food equals good mood.
And good mood equals cha-ching.
Very often.
Well, hopefully for Fargo's.
And if you want good mood, if you want to be in a good mood from good food, then go to Fargo's.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to go far.
Yep. It's okay. You just broke your glasses because you love Fargo's so much.
That much.
That
I will break my glasses for Fargo's.
Fargo's. It's so good, by the way. 17.
And it's rib tips tomorrow.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have rib tips.
Then
I'm gonna be full.
Ohio.
And then I could see Alan, Belinda, Maurice, somebody's like, you know what, you need a little bit more. A little bit more. I'm good, but I'll take more. And I won't stop eating. That's what happens. 1701 South. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it does happen that way.
1701 South Texas Avenue in Bryan. Without a doubt, the what?
The best barbecue in Texas, which means it's the best barbecue in the world.
You know that's their trademark.
Well, it's true.
Yeah, it's Fargo's, by the way. And we are back. It is TexAgs Radio. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations.
I think Elko has an ace in the hole with this defensive coordinator thing. Since
I feel like
since that's a segue from the song there.
See, I don't pay attention as well as you do. You're great at like finding little things in the music to bring into the show. I'm not that good.
Okay.
But yes, I do think he has an ace in the hole.
All right, let's hope so.
Well, and it may not be OC. I mean, DC. It may be OC. It may be both. I don't know. I just know I feel like he's the right guy, and I want to see how he puts it together.
Yeah, I'm kind of OCDC.
Yeah, I know. And you like ACDC.
I do like ACDC.
Yeah, you look like them a little bit. Who's older, ACDC or Olin?
Olin.
Yeah?
But I'm still alive. Like, Malcolm Young passed away.
He did?
Yeah, but we're not supposed to talk about
Music.
Music.
No, that professor got upset with us. It's all good. We're all about football. Football.
Yes.
Texas Bowl versus Oklahoma State. So beyond, we knew this was coming, right? Not that because we had inside information, but
it was obvious.
It was obvious it was going to be the Texas Bowl. I don't love the matchup with Oklahoma State, but what do they do really well? They run the ball really well. And what does A&M do pretty well?
Well, typically stop the run.
But you're going to be without Walter Nolan, without probably McKinley Jackson.
Maybe without Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of guys you don't know. Now, look, I remember, I think it was a Texas Bowl. It wasn't the Texas Bowl. It was one game. Might have been. Myles Garrett decided to play in a bowl game. There was another game up in North Carolina. Christian Kirk decided to play. I mean, that one guy was the number 1 overall pick. Another guy was the second-round pick, who's now a multimillionaire. But then there was Justin Madubuike, didn't play in the Texas Bowl. So it's just a reality of college football, just like NIL, is that a lot of guys are going to be entering the transfer portal, or there's
Which
some
wasn't
guys
really a
that won't
thing
be.
then, by
And
the
then
way.
a lot of guys are going to sit out because they're going to have agents to tell them to.
By the way, speaking of the portal, this came down a little bit ago. Dylan Gabriel into the portal. So Oklahoma losing their starting quarterback.
What will Dari Noka do?
Jackson Arnold expected to be the guy to lead them the rest of the way.
All right. Maybe he could see it on the wall, the writing on the wall, that Jackson Arnold's the guy to lead them.
Maybe.
I would prefer, because I'd prefer they have Arnold Jackson.
Oh,
different strokes.
Yeah, Mr. Drummond's son, or his adopted son, but son.
So you knew who I was talking.
Of course,
Jackson Arnold. Anyway,
and Willis.
What you talking about?
Oh, love that guy, Todd Bridges.
Oh.
What was Arnold's real name?
Gary Coleman.
All right. What about Mrs. Garrett's real name? I don't
Rue
know.
McClanahan.
Is that right?
I don't know.
All right. Anyway, look, we're gonna find out a lot about this roster here in the next couple days, right? Like,
yeah.
And I wouldn't be. By the way, how does it work? So it doesn't work this way, right? Like if I'm sure it doesn't work. I don't even know why I'm asking the question now. If somebody were to transfer in, it's not like they can magically play in the bowl game. No, they can't. You have to start school in January. So I take that back.
Here's what we got to wonder about: what guys are going to get into the portal? They won't be playing, and what guys are going to decide that they want to opt out and just prepare for the draft?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I don't get hurt. Anaya Smith's not playing because he's got a broken finger, right? So is Shamar Turner going to play? Is McKinley Jackson going to play? Is Edgerrin Cooper going to play? If all those guys play, you're going to be pretty good against the run.
Yep.
If they're not, are you going to be as good against the run?
Well, I think that's
maybe.
I think that's also a byproduct.
David Hicks plays more.
Elijah Robinson leaving, I think that's part of it. I think there's not as much brotherhood and loyalty to the new staff because they don't know him as much. I mean, yes, a lot of these guys do know Mike Elko, but it's not the same as the guy who was with you for the last 2 years.
You know what frustrates me? Because you're right on that. But what frustrates me is, and I know this is old man yelling at clouds, right? I get it. I'm old.
Why do they yell at clouds?
I don't know. But here's what frustrates me. You mentioned the loyalty to Elijah Robinson. What about the loyalty to Texas A&M?
Thank you.
What about the loyalty to all these fans that have supported you your entire career? What about the fans that have made contributions for you to profit off NIL? What about just the fact that this is your school, your team that's developed you and have fed you and clothed you and done all these things? What about that loyalty?
It's become a transactional relationship.
It has, and it sucks. That's why I'll always admire Christian Kirk, who and Miles. But I remember people were telling Christian Kirk because I think he'd been hurt, and he actually got jacked up in that game against Wake Forest, and I think and then came back, and he had a great game.
Right.
But it meant something to him. They talk about that brotherhood. Doesn't it mean something to you to play for the guy next to you? That y'all have competed with. I mean, again, I'm old. That's the way it used to be. I wonder to how many guys it still is that way.
So I know that you probably had talks with Quinn, and I'm having talks with my boys when they're still 2 years away from college, and I don't even know if they're going to be playing athletics in college. I hope they are, but they may not be. They may not be blessed to do that. When you make a decision for school, it can't just be about starting at this place. It's got to be the whole package. Do you like your relationship with your coaches? Do you like your relationship with your teammates? What does it do for your degree? Do you like the environment? Are you going to be happy there? It is not just, all right, my coach left, I'm out. It's got to be more about the relationship, at least the way I'm parenting. And by the way, my kids are not going to be taking advantage of NIL. They're not that level of athlete. But it is about the relationship that you have with the university and what it does for your future.
Well, I understand that the relationship you develop with a coach, typically the coach that's on point of recruiting you, is why most guys pick a school.
Yep.
So I understand that relationship, but you would think over the period of time, you would think it's clearly not the case because it happens everywhere. But over the period of the time, I guess it bothers me that too many guys just apparently never developed that relationship with the team. They just, they're like coaches. They become mercenaries.
Sure. But that's, I guess my point is, as a parent, I want it to be more than that relationship with that person, because that person could leave at any point. He could be fired. He could take a better job. So it better go deeper than that. It can't be just one guy. That guy plus I love the community. I love the locker room. I love these classes I'm going to be able to take. And that relationship. If you're unhappy, you got to go. I get that.
Yeah. So when you come to A&M to play football, you are treated as a celebrity.
Yeah.
And you make money and all those things. And I find it troubling that guys that are still going to be here decide to opt out. It's one thing like Walter Nolan, like, I'm in the transfer portal. Okay, you're not going to be around. But if you have the ability to play and you don't, that just bothers me because.
Yeah, but now you have outside influence in your ears telling you, hey, you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to do this. You don't want to, and it's just, this is where we are.
It's where we are.
This is where we are. Let's hit a break here. Let's talk QC Kinetics. Don't go through another year with that awful joint pain. Call QC Kinetics right now and make 2024 the year you are back to living your normal life again, doing the things that you love to do, whatever it may be. OB loves to jump rope and climb trees. That's his thing. QC Kinetics can help him do that all the time. Get your life back. They're the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. These all-natural treatments that can repair and restore that damaged tissue, giving you pain-free movement once again. And by the way, QC Kinetics has tens of thousands of people that are satisfied around the country, people who had knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain, who were able to get lasting relief with no surgery, no drugs, no downtime. So if you got injuries from an old injury, let's say it's from pain associated with arthritis or something like that, the future of medicine is right here. It's the right now. It's not the future. It's now. It's regenerative medicine treatments from QC Kinetics. Call them now. You can get the most out of 2024. Get back to doing what you love. And don't forget, you can use your HSA and FSA funds. Call QC Kinetics for a free consultation. That phone number, 979-452-6000. QC Kinetics, 979-452-6000. That is 979-452-6000. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. All right, OB. A little bit deeper dive into this playoff talk. I don't want to say I'm shocked because we talked about it on this show last week. You know, it was possible that Georgia didn't get in. I still think a college football playoffs without Georgia, who had gone 2 years in a row, almost 3, undefeated, and basically did, right? Mm-hmm. Basically did regular season undefeated, is not in the freaking playoffs. I don't know who gets eliminated from those 4. The system is completely flawed. Washington obviously deserves where they are. Texas, hey, they've got the head-to-head against Alabama. Mm-hmm. I think Bama winning the conference championship needs to mean something. They may have got it right, but the system sucks.
Florida State, if it was up to me, by the way, that's exactly the way I thought it would go. Mm-hmm. Okay. If it was up to me, it'd be 1 Michigan, 2 Washington, 3 Florida State, 4 Texas.
Gotcha.
And I don't understand those as but Texas beat Alabama in September. What? It doesn't count? Well, Alabama's better. Maybe Texas is better now. And
I think Texas is better.
When
we
get to the point where we're saying the games themselves don't matter, what are we doing here? Then why don't we just sit down with the committee at the beginning of the year and they say, here's the teams that get to play in the playoff. These are the teams we think's better.
So who would be eliminated from this? Would it be Alabama for you?
Yeah, I just said so.
So Alabama for Florida State, though.
Florida State's unbeaten.
Yep.
They beat everybody, and they played the team, like I said, that was 14th in the own committee's rank.
No SEC team. Yeah.
Because Texas has scoreboard on Alabama. Alabama has scoreboard on Georgia. Now, you want to say, but Florida State can't win. They're not good. Really? Then why do you have them number 5? Because you have them ahead of Georgia. And by the way, Georgia, the committee's saying Florida State is better than Georgia. They're 5 and they're 6. The difference between Georgia and Alabama was a false start on a field goal attempt.
Yep.
It was a 3-point game. Georgia missed the field goal attempt because the ball was moved back 5 yards. The field goal hit the upright. It was trailing out. If it had been 5 yards closer, it's in. They're still playing.
And they dropped from 1 to 6, the biggest drop ever in the last week.
And Florida State dropped after beating a team. All right. Florida State dropped after beating a team that was ranked higher than the team Texas beat.
Right.
And Texas rose by 4 points, by 4 places, beating a team. Think about that. That's how screwed up the committee is. They took a team that I think Oklahoma State was ranked at like 18th.
Yep.
Texas beats them and goes from what, 7th to 3. Florida State beats a team that's ranked 4 spots higher than the team Texas beats, and Florida State drops. Make that make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It's stupid.
And that's not a shot at Texas. I just said Texas has scoreboard on Alabama.
They should be.
The games what happened to Florida State's the same thing that happened to A&M in 2020. Florida State is not as big a name. They're a big name, but they're not as big a name as Alabama and not as big a name as Georgia, and therefore having an injured quarterback gave them an out without considering the fact that, they had a third-string quarterback and still won because it's a team game. If it's all about the quarterback, then why the hell is USC not in there? With the quarterback that won the Heisman Trophy last year, and the reporters know everything, right? Because I know who's better. Well, these are the same reporters that said USC was the number 6 team in the country entering the season. So reporters don't know crap. Again, think about it. Let me reiterate. Florida State beat an opponent that was ranked in the
top 13.
Was ranked 14th.
14.
4, and they fell. Texas beat a team that was ranked 4 spots behind Louisville, and they rose 4 spots.
Doesn't make sense. It's all because Jordan Travis isn't there. They're being penalized for that.
But it's a team game.
Always has been.
And you can always say, well, yeah, I know they're not going to be. You don't know.
Nobody knows.
Because Oregon was a 9.5-point favorite over Washington. Well, we know Oregon's going to win because they're a 9.5 point. Well, they didn't win. We know USC is going to be a great team with Caleb Williams as the starting quarterback. He won the Heisman Trophy. Well, no, they were actually a pretty crappy team.
They were crappy. So I haven't looked, and I don't know if you guys have. Who would be favored, Washington or Texas?
That's a heck of a question.
I think Texas will be favored.
Yeah, probably.
I will say this. Didn't
they play in a bowl game just
last year and Washington won?
Yeah.
I think beat them by a couple scores.
Yeah, I think they did.
Currently, Texas is favored by 4.
Yeah, so I do want to say this. I can say that Texas deserves to be one of the 4, and also be disgusted at the PR campaign that they got throughout this entire process.
Don't they always?
They do.
Unless it's against Oklahoma. No program has ever benefited more from the PR campaigns in Oklahoma. You know, Oklahoma, remember way back when it was BCS, Oklahoma got just spanked by Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game and still got put into the national championship game where they lost to LSU.
Yep.
While USC should have been in there playing LSU. I mean, the college football has been so messed up forever, and the first thing they did to screw it up this time again is they go to a committee.
So Derrick Henry, not the Derrick Henry, our Derrick Henry says, I'm not convinced Washington is good. And the funny thing is, I feel the same way as Derrick, except they pass every test that's in front of them. They do.
Well, but you know what? Derrick Henry has that opinion. Why is his opinion? I get the opinions that matter are the opinions of those on the committee, which, again, they shouldn't have a committee. But who's to say his opinion's not right? I mean, we all have opinions, right? We all have noses.
Yep.
Opinions are like a nose. Everybody has one.
My opinion is Georgia's still the best team in the country, even though they lost this past weekend. That's my opinion.
And Florida's ranked ahead of them. Florida State's ranked ahead of them.
Yeah. And my opinion is Alabama might win it all.
They
Again,
might.
With their worst team they've had in a while. Or maybe not their worst team.
Most vulnerable.
The most vulnerable
because,
midway through the season.
Well, that opens up a whole other reason for me to be frustrated because Alabama looked at their offense and said, it's not going to work this way, but this is what our quarterback can do, and this is what he can do well, so let's change our offense to maximize our quarterback's ability.
And had they done that against Tennessee and Bama, which they didn't, I'm talking about A&M, excuse me, they win.
Might have been a different.
I think they win.
Might have been a different
They did.
Result.
It was 20-22 offense in those 2 games. I'm going to let my quarterback get hit. By the way, that's a different issue. And we're going to take time processing the information that's happening on the field and take a long, long time. It was the same offense we saw in 22, regardless who the coordinator, who was calling plays in those games. And then they started adjusting when it was too late.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of reasons to be frustrated this morning with what the committee decided and with who's in it and why they're in it and all the things and how it pertains to A&M's failures.
So, and by the way,
hey, Texas is in it. You know why Texas is in it? Beyond the record, you know why they got that record? Because they went and got an offensive coach that quite frankly, has a modern offense.
And by the way, like there's a lot of games that they could have or should have lost this year.
Absolutely.
But they won.
Well, there's a lot of games that
A&M should have won. They didn't.
There's a lot of games that Alabama could have lost.
And they didn't.
Because
good teams.
I mean, Auburn, for goodness sakes, 2 weeks ago, you're going to tell me that Auburn is better than Louisville. They might be, but I don't think so.
Right.
But that's what, again, we're saying we think. And everybody talks about the last touchdown pass, right? If Auburn, the dipstick doesn't fumble the punt walking backwards because he's afraid to catch it, Auburn wins that game.
Yep.
Alabama got 2 miracles.
And regardless of what you think about Texas and what they would do with an SEC schedule, they are benefiting now, and they've benefited the last 2 years of recruiting with an SEC, a potential schedule coming soon. And all the goodwill that they're going to get from this little run is going to add to next year's team. And by the way, next year's schedule, pretty favorable SEC schedule for them.
You remember what that one kid that A&M was recruiting last year, the receiver out of, is it DeSoto or someplace? Jonte.
Oh, Jonte Cook.
Yeah, maybe he's from Arlington. I can't remember where he's from. Dallas area. Remember what his tweet?
About the offense, A&M, Texas's offense compared to A&M's offense?
Texas has A&M has the athletes, but not the system.
Yeah.
Texas, everybody could see it, and there you're seeing the results of it right now. That where both programs are. Texas had the system, A&M doesn't. A&M had a coach that said, "By God, we're going to stick to this because this is what I."
Edward Minier on the YouTube page says Florida State had the 55th ranked strength of schedule. Nobody's really emphasizing that, except
they were six. The ACC was 6-4 against the SEC.
Yep.
You can try to. Well, what is it? The Mark Twain line. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yep.
You can make a statistic. You can twist it around to make it say anything you want it to.
You can. Let's hit a break here. We're going to come back and
I know,
read some
I do
text
it all the
messages. You're going to take a break?
Yeah.
Take a little nap?
I was just going to throw that in there.
When's the last time you had a nap?
I don't know. Yesterday.
Okay, good. I like naps are fun. Right now we're talking Heritage Films. They make documentary films. They do, 2-hour documentary films for families. They also do shorter 20-minute Q&As with family members, kids for the most part. They're awesome. Heritage Films and Chance McClain do amazing work. If you are interested this holiday season, calling Chance up, maybe getting a documentary film about your family and what you do for Christmas Eve and have Chance there for a big event, you can do that. You can call him up and have him come out there, shoot the video. A couple months later, you got yourself a 2-hour documentary that you can watch with everybody. We did it with my father when he's 92. He's 93 now, and we all got to watch it together. It was awesome. Great experience watching that movie, his life story on tape, or on video, I should say. And my kids got to watch it, and eventually their kids are going to get to watch it. Just an awesome, awesome thing that we have done for our family. We also did the Year Flicks, which is these 20-minute videos, and my daughter Annalise is all over that one, and it's just talking about things she's into, favorite subjects, favorite moments from soccer, whatever it may be, and put into a 20-minute cool video that we get to watch, Q&A with the pictures and the video and all that good stuff. And then we're going to follow it up in a couple years of the next phase in her life. And you can do that with freshman year to sophomore year to junior year to senior year here at Texas A&M. If you've got a student that's on campus, find out what their major is, what they're into, all the different things that change throughout our life. The phone number for Heritage Films is 713-893-8341, yourheritagefilm.com, 713-893-8341. TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Time for Around Aggieland, presented by Norman G. State Bank. Norman G. State Bank, rock solid banking. Website is normangstatebank.com. Before we go to Kay Nagley, what did Dalton just tell you?
Sorry, he told me to not suck. And I feel like I've been here long enough to, like, receive better words of encouragement, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Break a leg. Sorry, after Jordan Travis is probably
That's kind of...
Hey, do great.
That's some choice words, David.
Sorry. Break a leg. Go ahead.
So A&M football, despite the news that Texas A&M will be playing in the 2023 Tax Act Bowl, A&M football held their team awards last night. Tax Act Texas
That's actually the name.
It's sponsored by Tax Act.
I think we have to say that when we talk about it.
Yeah, like that's like the official name, I think. Whatever. They had their football banquet awards last night, so just want to run through some names. Real quick, the Hart Award went to 12th man Sam Matthews, very deserving. Team captains Fidel Diggs, McKinley Jackson, Damani Richardson, Layden Robinson, and of course Anaya Smith. The Aggie Strength Award went to Smith as well. The Brotherhood Impact Award went to the entire 12th man kickoff team. That was cool to see. Most improved on offense, Le'Veon Moss. Most improved on defense is Shamar Stewart. Skill Award on offense went to Noah Thomas and Jade Walker. Skill Award on defense went to Damani Richardson and Torian York. Trenches Award on offense, Max Wright, Trey Zune. And then on the defensive side, Shamar Turner and Walter Nolan. Special teams MVP, Sam Matthews. Defensive MVP, Edrin Cooper. And then offensive MVP, Anaya Smith. If I could get y'all's thoughts on that.
All good awards. I love Jade getting his. That was great to see.
Well, the MVP awards to me were,
spot.
Yeah, slam dunk, but quite predictable.
Yeah, Anaya's, both of those guys probably won't have them next year.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I'd be shocked, but it'd be more than a pleasant surprise. But both of them have represented well, and if they move on, we're all gonna wish them the best, and hope they become insanely rich.
You're right. Okay, anything else?
Aggie basketball, both men's and women's, do both have a busy Wednesday, as women's will tip off at 11 a.m. on Wednesday at Reed Arena, and then the men's team will tip off at 8 p.m. on Wednesday. So maybe just a full day at Reed is what we need amidst finals week. So
a full day at Reed. Hey, by the way, so Christmas schedule coming out soon. Let's make a deal, Kay.
Okay.
If we can get 200 likes on the show today, you're hosting one of the days.
I can do that. See, I can just make this happen. That's the thing. I kind of
then make it happen every day.
I'll make it happen. I am often chiming in on there, saying what's up to people and not kicking people off. So
200 likes, but you kick people off?
No, you do.
I don't kick people off. I just mute them.
Same thing.
No, and it does it for 300 seconds. I wish we'd do it for weeks.
Oh, really?
Okay, that was an appropriate shot at David, by the way. He definitely kicks people off.
I don't kick them off. I mute them. I don't know. You can kick him off. You're the one who told me we couldn't kick him off.
Let the people debate.
Just don't be rude about Olin. I love him. Anyway,
everybody's rude toward me. I'm used to it.
What did I say? 300 likes?
You said 200. Now you're raising your number.
For Kay to host by the end of the show. All right, Obi, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
When we come back on TexAgs Radio, Tom Hart joining us. We'll talk about this college football chaos and all that good stuff. We'll talk about Mike Elko because we didn't talk to him last week. That and more. TexAgs. All right, we're back. Crazy few days, not only in college football, but for Texas A&M in particular. Let's chit-chat about it here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. We go to the Brian Foley Law Hotline, and that's where we find Tom Hart of the SEC Network and ESPN. Tom, good morning, buddy.
Good morning. Chaos is probably the proper word to describe everything in college athletics over the weekend, not just in football, but a lot of upsets in the college basketball side, too.
Yeah, so, Tom, look, they probably got the right 4 teams. I don't know. This is just another time that we can complain about the system being flawed. And, oh, by the way, it'll look different next year. But for right now, it just sucks, man. Like, I don't know what the right answer is, but this ain't it.
Well, there's a lot of issues with it. I think it's flawed. I think it's unfair. Like you asked a team in a Power 5 conference to do one thing, and that's to go out and win every weekend. And they did that. And so to take that opportunity away from Florida State, I found to be patently unfair. Now, one of the problems in fixing the issue, yes, we have next year coming, and that's fine. But there's just so many people to blame, including the ACC itself, when they delayed what would have been a 12-team playoff this year by throwing a hissy fit and trying to get an alliance formed, or forming an alliance, with 2 other leagues that, by the way, only lasted about 10 months. It then got shut down when the Big Ten went against that alliance by stealing teams from the Pac-12. So, it put – I know that committee tries really hard. I think, and they're good people, but it put the committee in an unenviable position of trying to sort this out. And their reasoning left a lot to be desired, because if it's the 4 best teams, or if you're saying, as Drew Corrigan did, part of our decision-making was based on, with the coaches in the room, who would you least like to face? Well, the answer is Georgia. There's no way you'd rather face Georgia over Texas, for example, and I think Texas is getting off scot-free in a lot of these discussions, being a team with a loss just because they beat Alabama head-to-head. But, yeah, there's a lot wrong with the process, and I think there's holes in accountability when it comes to this. You send one guy out to answer questions, and he gets harassed for 24 hours, 36 hours, and then you kind of forget about it. It's unfortunate across the board.
What do you think about that first matchup, Michigan, or the 1-4, Michigan taking on Alabama? Alabama playing like the number 1 team in the country. Michigan is the number 1 team in the country. Just your thoughts on that one.
I don't know that Alabama's really playing like the number 1 team in the country. I think that they've their overall talent has allowed them to avoid the lack of an efficient passing game, especially downfield. It's kind of bailed them out, is the way I see it. I mean, Jalen Milroe had 7 completions in the first half Saturday. That's usually not going to cut it. Now, this is the same Michigan team that ran the ball 32 consecutive times against Penn State. They're not going to throw the ball if they don't have to. So maybe this turns into a run fest. But some of Bama's best plays on Saturday, especially in the fourth quarter, came out of the quarterback run game. That can be, at some point, that becomes entirely too predictable to have success against elite opponents. For whatever reason, it wasn't against Georgia. That surprised me a little bit, especially with the number of spies that Georgia committed to Milroe. But that being said, I didn't see Alabama looking like an elite team in the Auburn game, and I didn't see them looking like an elite team in the passing game. And I know I'd be nitpicky against Georgia, but otherwise, I mean, holy smokes, what a fun SEC championship game! What a cool matchup to have those two teams going head-to-head with so much on the line in what turned out to be a playoff game and an elimination game.
Well, Tom, after all the drama that Michigan went through, Harbaugh's there winning the Big Ten, the number 1 team, just for him, poetic, I guess, if you will.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that we kind of all of the Harbaugh stuff that has happened, and now thanks to the selection committee, the guy who is under not one but two NCAA investigations concurrently, and a coaching staff that is stealing signs and just causing espionage. That as of today, that's just totally overlooked in the college football landscape as we prepare for the best part, what should be the best part of the season in the playoff. I mean, it's amazing. I did notice, though, that their commissioner didn't stick around for long during the trophy presentation.
Talking to Tom Hart here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner Jewelers. All right, how about the other side? And I don't know if poetic's the right word for this one, but Florida State, obviously they wanted out of the ACC. The ACC this year had a winning record against the SEC, and the ACC is left out of the college football playoffs. So are they finding every way out right now?
There's nowhere to go. They're nomads. There's nobody that wants them. The league that makes the most geographic sense has no motivation or inclination to add them. But not only is there a big old roadblock in Gainesville, Florida, but the way, and I was just talking to a senior administrator this weekend, and in the league, in the SEC, and they said, listen, the way that they've acted has the entire league, if not the folks in Birmingham specifically, totally turned off to what Florida State could possibly bring to the table. Maybe, and this is just a thought here, but listen, the ACC did have a good season, especially non-conference. Now, some of their guys that got hurt, like the Duke quarterback, cost them some momentum, and Clemson being down and some of those tough losses cost them some headlines that they would normally get. But the ACC had a great non-conference season, especially Florida State's 3-touchdown win against the guy who's going to win the Heisman Trophy, Jaden Daniels and LSU. So perhaps FSU would have been better off spending some of that time instead of complaining and moaning and putting down their league and saying, wow, how great is this league? And promoting the fact that, hey, we're going to be undefeated conference champions of a premier league with great players and great coaches. Instead, they crapped on it for the last 3 months and said it was, a bunch of bunk, and now they don't get credit for winning it. They certainly didn't get any credit for the game against Louisville Saturday night, playing with their third-string quarterback, which, here's the other thing about leaving Florida State out, and I do think that they deserve empathy here. They weren't going to be playing with their third-string quarterback in the playoff, number one. And they're going to get Rodemaker back, and second string is always better than third string. But to guess, and they went undefeated with their backup quarterbacks, including a road win at an SEC school in Florida. So I think there's some unfairness there, but it really boils down to this, and this is tied into the FSU backup quarterback prognostications, how they're going to play and if they're going to be any good with them. It's that the committee should not be in the business of projecting. The committee should be in the business of judging. These are the results. Here's who you beat. Here's how you did it. Here's how your resume stacks up against the next one. Not, what would the point spread be? What would Vegas think in the situation? Vegas was wrong, by the way, on all of the major conference championship games this weekend. So I don't want to hear, well, so-and-so would be a 5-point favorite on a neutral field against, Team B. That's a bunch of bunk. This is college sports. This is totally unpredictable. The players are unpredictable and inconsistent. The coaching is inconsistent week to week. So, by the way, that's another lesson for all you out there. That's why you don't get rich gambling in college sports.
What about Texas, a team that escaped some games that would have looked really bad? Houston comes to mind. There were some other ones, K-State. Yet they win. I mean, at the end of the day, they win. They've got one loss on their schedule, and they've taken advantage of a semi-good schedule and gotten their way into a playoff.
I give them credit for, when these things are judged, their loss was the least damaging in my eyes. Neutral field, last second, in the game the entire time against Oklahoma. That's fine. I still don't think usurps an undefeated team in a Power 5 conference. But among the losses, that's fine. And the Alabama win, we think back to that September date, like that, they were in control of that entire game. That wasn't we got a fumble on a punt and we're able to punch it in. No, they deserved that win. They earned it. I think, and I know Aggie fans don't want to hear this, but I just think they're in a really good position, at the quarterback position, right? What's going to happen there? How good is Arch going to be? Is Quinn going to come back? Which who knows what's going to happen there. But Sark has built, and he did this 3 and 4 years ago, when the move to the SEC was evident, he started building from the inside out, and he recognized the style of play. And I talked to him about this about a year ago, before the bowl game in San Antonio against Washington. The style of play in the Big 12, which is kind of all gas, no brakes. You can have a creative defense, but you don't have to have a dominating defense. You can be undersized, especially on the defensive side, because you need great speed to keep up with these spread passing attacks. He recognized that wasn't going to happen, and they had to get bigger on the defensive line and on the offensive line. And he built inside out, and I think they're really in great position, regardless of what happens, January 1st. They're in great position to enter the SEC with a lot of strengths and built in the right way with a very strong foundation.
Talking to Tom Hart here on the Brian Foley Law Hotline, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, Georgia. That one's a hard one, man, because to me, Georgia not only is one of the 4 best teams in the country, but it just proves if you're going to lose, you better lose early.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a tough pill to swallow, but aside from the odds of them getting in, once we saw the other games play out, and especially Florida State win Saturday night, you knew going into that game that was an elimination game. And I want to swing back to Florida State here for a second. What the committee did, the lasting impact, even though we're going to 12 teams last year, is even though critics of a 12-team playoff have been blaming a playoff for this, it's really the playoff committee who's accomplished this. They have devalued the regular season, right? Because now losses mean even less. Obviously, in a 12-team playoff, you can be able to get in with a loss, maybe 2. Well, if you have a good enough win or you come from the right conference, and it really doesn't matter. I like the fact that the game Saturday at Mercedes-Benz was a de facto elimination game. We like our sports to have defined winners and losers, and when we know something is on the line. And I still think it's enough to be playing for a conference championship. I know that means a lot to players and coaches, but it means more when a trip to the playoff is attached to that. Kirby is the ultimate motivator, and he's really good at that stuff. They're going to go in full steam to their bowl game, and from a recruiting standpoint, he's just going to turn it up a notch. They're not going anywhere, even though they missed the playoff this year.
Talking to Tom Hart here on TexAgs Radio. So, Tom, we didn't get to chat last week, but the Mike Elko news happened. Just your thoughts on Elko returning to Texas A&M and what he's trying to build here.
Well, I loved what he said. I love that he came out and said it. Now's the time to show it. I forget the exact quote, but it's not about talking, it's about doing. That fits his personality. Mike Elko was in a position, even when he was at A&M, where he could afford to be choosy. And some coaches, especially at his age, get anxious and they want to jump, and when's my opportunity going to come, and I better grab this one while I can. He had the chance to be the head coach at Temple. And he said, why would I leave? This is after his first year at A&M, if I'm not mistaken, when Jeff Collins took the Georgia Tech job. Well, why leave here when I am on a track for bigger and better than just Temple? And you could make an argument Duke versus Temple, could be even, but what he accomplished at Duke was amazing. And the fact that Texas A&M, once he left, turned into a 500 club under Jimbo. I mean, he the most important part I think about that hire is that in an era where we just saw Ohio State's quarterback go into the portal today. That's astounding, especially because he threw for a ton of yards. He was really good at that position. In this era of talent retention being one of the most valuable aspects that a coach can bring to the table, the fact that they're reintroducing a guy to that building where people know him, the players are excited to play for him, and they vouch for him, that is incredibly valuable.
So how important are these next couple of days, weeks here for Elko? Because obviously guys are starting to get into the portal. Elijah Robinson leaves. He's got to hire a DC and OC. Regardless of what has happened over the last 24 hours, there's still enough talent here to do something great if they can get the players to stay, Tom.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. It is. I was talking to a basketball coach about this recently, and his sales pitch to his athletic director when it came to how they're going to use their NIL money was really simple. And anyone who runs their own business knows what I'm about to say. It is much more expensive to go out and find a new employee as opposed to retaining your current employees. You're going to spend 5 times as much just from a small business standpoint, large business standpoint. To get them in, to train them, to find them, it's very expensive. So it's more important to keep your guys than to get new guys. And I think that is very important. I'm also curious, and I haven't followed it in the last couple of days. Is he bringing his OC from Duke? Or is he's waiting to see if he gets the job? Because I think that would be a very valuable piece.
He is still waiting, and I think Johns he'll be considered, but it's not just him. He may be swinging for a bigger fish, Tom, to be 100% honest.
Oh, really?
Well, that's the thing.
What are you hearing?
I'm not hearing a name per se, but Billy has reported he's got, $11 million to spend on his assistants. The fact that he hasn't hired one yet means he's still surveying what's out there. And the fact that Tyler Santucci isn't coming over from Duke means, that was his DC there. He might be bringing in a bigger fish there. Offensive coordinator, he can do whatever he wants, right? And it might be the guy from Duke, right? But he might be waiting to see, the dude at Oregon and Will Stein or somebody else, right? I'm not saying him per se, but that level of coach.
It's a great place to be. And by the way, that's why if you're Mike Elko, you played your cards right in your career by knowing your value and knowing which jobs to say no to. Listen, moments ago, we detailed where some other teams in this league are. We didn't even talk about Alabama and being a CFP team this year, but Georgia and Kirby and the foundation that Texas has, and they're not slowing down anytime soon. Missouri's playing in year 6. They've got their quarterback coming back and a bunch of pieces coming back next year. So expectations are going to be high there. This is not a league for the timid. I think the Duke offensive coordinator did a fantastic job and would be a great addition, and the knowledge base that he has with Elko and the comfortability there, and maybe you get the quarterback as well. Who knows? But the bottom line is it's good to swing for the fences. The problem, I would say this, my hesitation is the only problem with that, and Mississippi State was in a very different situation, obviously with Mike Leach's passing, and a different situation from their status in the college football world of what they had to spend on assistants. But they got strung along in the coordinator hiring process when Zach Arnett got the job last December. They didn't hire a guy until late. They didn't get their first choice. Their offense was a total disaster, and they never got it going. So timeliness does have importance in this process, especially if you get burned or you miss out on your first choice or the guy that you think is the home run hire.
Tom, I'm looking through some of these upsets over the weekend, man. Make sense of it in college basketball. I mean, you got Duke falling to Georgia Tech. There's several other games out there where like Kentucky falls to UMC Wilmington. What'd you think of this entire weekend?
Yeah, just total chaos. Auburn lost on the road yesterday to Appalachian State. Mississippi State was ranked. They had a great start to the season. They lost twice this week understandable that they lost on the road at Georgia Tech, but then they lost at home to Southern yesterday. Arkansas, after that huge win against Duke in the midweek in the Challenge, lost at home in a game that they should have won. College basketball, I think going forward, is going to be unpredictable, just the nature of it because of the portal and guys getting minutes together and learning each other and being brand new teams. But it was not a good weekend for the SEC. The Challenge was okay. They split the Challenge. Kentucky's win against Miami really put Kentucky in the driver's seat just from a perception standpoint because they showed that they're as talented as we think they are. And then that fell apart with the loss to UNC Wilmington, where they had one guy go for like 35, and as a team, they buried a bunch of threes. Kentucky didn't shoot it well. Same thing for Arkansas. They had incredible momentum. That building was as loud as it's ever been in their win against Duke. Now, Duke lost again, so they're not the same Duke program. But as a league, you've got to hold on to that momentum. Missouri's got a 300-plus loss to Jackson State at home. The concern is, like, let's compare this to football. It didn't really hurt football because Alabama got in. But the concern is if you don't have a good non-conference, not only does the perception hurt you when it comes to voters, but the net release just came out today with the rankings. The numbers don't like bad losses, and those hang over your head come Selection Sunday, no matter what happens in your league, unless you have like 5 teams just beat the snot out of everybody else, but that will limit the number of teams you get in. So I think the chaos outside of the SEC probably makes it a little bit more bearable, but overall some bad losses that are going to be impactful based on how they influence the numbers, not just for the teams that lost those games, but for their conference opponents going forward.
Tom, I'll close with this. A&M basketball needed the weekend off. They had played so many games, especially on the road. Still dealing with some injuries out there. Just they're a team, though. You know, they get better as the year goes on. All those Buzz teams do.
Every single one of them. And the beauty of it is there are some knowns with A&M, but there's also plenty of unknowns, just like any other program. His willingness and ability to make adjustments during a season are second to none. He had a team at Virginia Tech where he was married to this one defensive philosophy. They lost, I think it was on a Tuesday night. On Wednesday, they completely revamped their defensive philosophy. They changed everything, and they introduced it that next Saturday. They went on a run. They had a great season, ended up making the tournament. Very few coaches are willing to do that, but it's important to be flexible in this day and age because you have to learn more about your team and your individuals on an accelerated pace than you ever were allowed to do before. Jay Williams likes to tell the story about Mike Krzyzewski. He's like, I don't think he knew my name as a freshman because Coach K didn't need to know freshman because he wasn't going to play a freshman. So you earn an opportunity to get on the floor, then he'll learn who you are and how you fit into the team. But you're going to be doing it against a bunch of upperclassmen. Even the upperclassmen are new in college hoops. So that learning process has to get accelerated, and you have to be flexible enough at one point to say, you know what we thought was going to work is not working. I'm not going to be stubborn about it. We're going to change what we do so we can be successful. And that's what makes Buzz a great coach.
Tom, we appreciate it, sir. Thanks so much, man.
Always great. Thanks, dude.
Later, buddy. Tom Hart on the Brian Foley Law Hotline. When we come back, I think an open segment as we wait for Billy to get here. Right now, we're talking a moment for Caldwell Country Chevrolet, Highway 21 in Caldwell, online at caldwellcountrychevrolet.com. Look, if you've gone through this car purchasing experience before, you know it's stressful. Because the finances, you got to get that aligned, the kind of car you want to get. Then you test drive cars. You fall in love with one, but the price is not where you want it to be. You don't get the trade-in value that you want at a certain spot. I know all that. I've been down that road several times here over the last couple of years. That is why I highly recommend that you go to caldwellcountrychevrolet.com. You start your search there and get a feel for the pricing of the vehicles that they have. And then if you do make out the commute to Caldwell, you're going to love the cars that they have on the lot, the experience. The entire experience is great. They give you a great trade-in value, great pricing, and the best customer service you can imagine. And that goes beyond, right? It's not just while you're buying the car. Their customer service afterwards for their service customers is incredible. They have complimentary pickup. They are proud supporters of A&M Athletics. They do it all. It is not a far drive. We're talking 15 minutes from the very edge of Bryan to the very beginning of Caldwell. Short conversation away, but you'll see the difference when you step on the lot and do business with the good people there at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Highway 21 in Caldwell, online, caldwellcountrychevrolet.com. It is TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. I'm reading this on the YouTube page. Appreciate everybody. By the way, if we get to 200 likes by the end of the show, Kay Nagley's going to get to host a show during the holidays. So if you guys don't get to 200 likes, you don't like Kay Nagley. And I know that's not true because I read the YouTube comments. This is from, no, I'm not going to read that one. I'm going to read a comment from Matt Tackle, who says, and I didn't know this, so this is interesting. We'll talk to Billy about it later, but just read something about Spencer. By the way, he's the new defensive line coach for Texas A&M, came from Florida. He had originally accepted the same role he now has at Duke in January 2022, then flipped to Florida. So obviously Elko likes the guy and thinks he's a value target. Like I'm telling you, like yesterday before all this shook out, I was texted by a high school coach in Texas who was like, you guys, if Elijah ends up leaving, you got to get this guy. He's awesome. And it turned out to be the case. And he texted me a little smiley face afterwards. So I don't know if he knew something or not, but it was interesting to see that all play out. Let's go back to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Jared Schultz got some text messages for us.
Yeah, I got some talk about the NIL system. One person on the text line says, I despise the NIL and transfer portal. They've created a system of unrestricted free agency. Years from now, many more will agree this has destroyed college sports.
I don't know if I can go that far as destroy. I mean, we're still getting 100,000 a game, right? Like at A&M especially. But it is. You know what's happening? I'll compare it to the NBA. The NBA is still doing great, especially on social media. Now, if you reach Clay Travis, he'll tell you how all the numbers have plummeted. But there's a big segment of the population that still consumes the NBA. There's a lot of people like me that used to love the NBA, but they're like, I mean, I can kind of watch it, but I don't really get into it because it's changed too much. There's too much of this, and one culture in the NBA, and too much like 3-point shooting and no defense, and the players are all about the money. It's like OB earlier talking about yelling at the clouds, but that I feel it's the same vibe, right? There's gonna be a lot of us that like love it, but are like, man, it's not the way it used to be. So either we adjust for the sport that we love, and I know a lot of NBA people did, right? Either we adjust for the sport that we love, or it'll just be, but if you watch this show regularly or listen to this show regularly, I don't think you're going anywhere, right? All it takes is a little bit of winning. And then when you win, because I'll use another NBA comparison. I remember in the mid-'90s when the Rockets were winning championships, Michael Jordan won there, whatever, okay? And people hated that version of basketball because there was no scoring, right? Dude, the Summit was packed. All those games, even though not even the playoff games, right? Like all those games were packed. When you win, it's all good. When you lose, it sucks. And that's for everything in the sport. I don't need it, right? And I think if you watch TexAgs or listen to TexAgs, you need Aggie sports in your life. You need it. It's not just football, but football's the biggest one that we talk about. So while I 100% agree that I don't love the direction it's going, I sometimes question, like, am I really in it for this? All it takes is some winning. Then it's great. Everything's great. Like people at Texas are like, I love NIL. It's awesome. But I think Nick Saban did prepare us for what is happening. I don't love it, but you got to be the best at the new culture. If I'm talking about from an administration standpoint. As a fan, we don't have to like it, but I don't think we're going anywhere if our team is winning. That's, to me, is just like the NBA. The NBA in college, and there's other sports too, like some people got away from baseball, right? It takes a miraculous run to get you back into it. We go back to Jared at the News and Social Center.
Yeah, I have a kind of an idea from Roy Brantley on the text line.
Roy!
Just trying to make bowl games more competitive because a lot of times now we see people opting out of bowl games, things like that. He's saying perhaps NIL could include a provision that requires them to play in a bowl game or pay some of their money back.
I don't know.
Be very interesting.
I don't know legally how that works, but a huge bonus, like, hey, we're going to pay you $3 million, but okay, that's probably a little much. We're going to pay you.
In today's world, you never know.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to pay you $500,000, but if you play in the bowl game and you win, got to throw in the win just because. Why is that voice? I don't feel any NIL brokers talking like that.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, David.
But if you win and you play in the bowl game, double that money. That'd be something. I don't know legally how that works, but I'd be all for it. What else?
I had a question from Jeff and Caldwell because earlier we were talking about like Texas doing an NIL better than us. So he just says, how does Texas do NIL that's different and better than A&M?
I think that's a better question for Billy, who's got an understanding of that. I've heard him say that there's a couple guys that are really helping fund the entire, maybe one guy that's funding the entire thing, and that's his baby, right? That is his thing. That's where he spends his money. But that's probably a question better for Billy when he joins us here on the program. And I think he'll be here in the next couple of minutes. Let's hit a break. When we come back, potentially Billy Liucci. If not, we'll just get more into it, guys, because there's still, I'm looking, when I did my rundown for this morning, I started doing it last night. I'm looking like at all the opening segment, how many things we could have talked about. We could talk about Elijah Robinson. We could talk about Spencer coming over. We could talk about the bowl game. We could talk about the college football playoffs, like all these things. Oh, basketball getting started. There's so many different things we can talk about today. So we'll certainly try to get into those here over the next hour and a half. And at 10 o'clock, Buzz Williams will be joining us. Right now, we're talking sponsor and vendor opportunities at the Association of Former Students. If your organization or your business is looking for an opportunity to engage with Aggies, then check out the Association of Former Students. They bring Aggies of all ages together during events held throughout the year. Marquee events such as Aggie Ring Day, All Aggie Hullabaloo Gathering, they all welcome tens of thousands of guests. And there are many sponsorship and vendor opportunities available to get your brand in front of all those attendees. All events offer a wide variety of both digital and in-person options to promote your brand. Options include title sponsorship naming, on-site presence and activation, recognition in social media posts, and much, much more. There's also advertising opportunities in both the Texas Aggie Magazine and the Aggie News newsletter, which are seen by over 230,000 people. So, if your business is ready to engage with Aggies, choose a partner with the organization that's been supporting the Aggie Network for over 140 years. For more information on options available through the association, please email sponsorships@aggienetwork.com. It is the Association of Former Students. Welcome back into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio, the executive editor, co-owner, TexAgs Radio, Billy Liucci with us here. Good morning, Billy.
Nuño, how are you?
I'm all right, man.
Yeah.
It's Sunday was a bit of a day for A&M athletics. Just one thing after another. From not that we have to compare ourselves to Texas, but we do at times. Texas getting into the playoffs. I know, but they're deserving.
Thoughts on that.
They're deserving of it.
They are, by the way. It's set up.
Yeah,
they are, because
but the setup sucks.
Yeah, like they deserved to be in over Alabama, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue Florida State, but in that case, they would still be fourth, in my opinion, over Alabama. Problem with the whole setup, to me, and we'll talk about this later, is just like, I would sit there and wonder, should Florida State be in over Texas when you compare like what everyone really knows but won't say, which is how rancid the Big 12 was this year. But then I would go, should Alabama be ahead of Florida State when their best wins are to go beat number 1 Georgia? They beat the LSU team that is Florida State's best win by about the same. They both pulled away in the second half. And then you throw in that Texas's only loss Alabama's only loss was to another playoff team. When you factor all that in, and then you start going who played week to week, and then you're watching the games, and I think even with Jordan Travis, they weren't rolling people later in the season. I think you would look and go, is a 12-1 Bama more deserving than 13-0 Florida State? And I know it's not a group of 5, but sometimes if that team was undefeated in a group of 5, or if they were in like a conference that everyone said, man, that is such a trash conference this year, they didn't play anyone, it's not that extreme, but I think you could really make that argument, and they wouldn't do it. They would just say, well, they're undefeated, they should go. And I think that's wrong. But on the Texas side of it, I think you should factor in and say, man, they haven't played. There were a lot of teams that would have gone undefeated after that Bama game on Texas's schedule. Undefeated, much less they lost to OU.
Mm-hmm.
There are even more teams that would have navigated that with one loss. And no one looks at it that way. I think you'd put Georgia into that conversation. I think you might put Ohio State into that conversation. Once I applied the eyeball test, though, I would say, no, you know what? I think Texas would have a great chance to beat Ohio State. So I just don't know if they look at it like that. And I think they fall back on just these imaginary moving target metrics that they choose. And they're not looking at it like they're not really doing what they say they're doing, which is let's put the 4 best teams in. And I'm saying that as someone that thinks, as things stood, Texas deserved to be in. As things stood, Texas should have been. I'm saying this so people don't think this is some biased rant. As things stood, if they'd go my way, Texas would have been at or near the front of the discussion in my world, where you're really talking about, it would have been, okay, you're talking Texas, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Florida State for the last couple spots.
Yeah.
And you'd really be debating them. And I think Texas would probably have still gotten in that metric. But at least have that kind of conversation. And I don't think they do that. I think it just doesn't make sense to me how they put Texas in without much, it felt like without much of a doubt. And then how they left Florida State out.
It was the entire media like, they got to go. They're deserving.
There was a massive push, and they didn't ask the counterpoint questions, David, and that's all we got when A&M was in the conversation were counterpoint questions. Mm-hmm. All Florida State got this year were counterpoint questions. There weren't many counterpoint questions for Notre Dame. I always bring this up. No one ever. I didn't hear one person say Notre Dame lost to Clemson by 17 or 21 points in their conference championship game. They beat Clemson at home in overtime earlier in that season without Trevor Lawrence, the second best quarterback in college football. Actually, he might have been the best that year in 20. I'm thinking 19 was Burrow. They beat them without that quarterback playing. You talk about we're going to punish Florida State for not having Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis couldn't hold Trevor Lawrence's jock as a quarterback. And Trevor Lawrence missed that Notre Dame game. Nary a peep to say the only reason Notre Dame won was because Lawrence didn't play, because they had a freshman in DJ Uiagalelei, who I think he was a true freshman at the time. They went from an All-American, best quarterback in the country, to a true freshman quarterback, lost in overtime in their house.
Right.
Then Clemson slaughtered them with Lawrence, and no one – it was crickets. It was crickets. Let's just put them in. And so my point of all this is it's a moving target for these people. There is no consistency. There's no real – they don't get out there and give real reason. You know, the Texas fans were pissed a week ago because they were talking about Bo Nix's completion percentage. Mm-hmm. That was a big talking point. And that was stupid. That was a really ridiculous comment for the guy that heads up the committee to say. It was absurd. So, again, no one's going to be happy when they're left out. A lot of the teams that are in it, a week ago, we're talking about the stupidity and hypocrisy of the committee. I'm very happy that they're going to 12. I really am, because I didn't think so. I like the 4. I really think I would like 8 more than anything, but I'm to the point, outside of several weeks of this crap, the more the merrier. I don't think the 13th team in college football is ever going to win a football national title. I think they could do that in basketball. I think they could do that in baseball. I don't think that would ever happen in football, so I think 12 is enough.
We got to hit a break, but I do want to ask you, your eyeball best 4 versus who should be, how different is it? If your eyeball were to say who are the 4 best teams in college football from what you've seen and where they're playing right now, who would those 4 best teams be?
I think in no particular order, Michigan, Washington, Alabama. That's where it's tough, because I Georgia and Texas. But see, to me, Texas, it's hard. Like, everyone's on Florida State right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I heard what Olin said earlier. They held a Louisville offense averaging more than 30 to 6 points. Florida State just beat a Louisville team that, if you watch football, and people were on me this week, because I said, if you watch football, and this has nothing to do with A&M and what Oklahoma State and A&M do in a Texas Bowl, probably both of them without several key players, it has nothing to do with that. A lot of people of other fan bases, in particular Texas, can't wrap their heads around the fact that I'm having an opinion that has nothing to do with A&M. Oklahoma State lost to UCF 45-3. That's 6 touchdowns. They lost by 6 touchdowns to Central Florida. They lost, if you want to say, well, that's an outlier, okay, well, they lost to South Alabama, not Alabama, South Alabama, not South Carolina, South Alabama, 33-7 at home. Oh, that was much earlier in the year. Well, that's also when you beat Alabama. So are we counting these or not? We are. Those are disgraceful, just hideous losses. And that's who you played in your conference title game. Go look at Louisville's resume. They have an ugly one to Pitt, I believe. Louisville's been a good football team pretty much this entire season. They were a 10-2 football team going in there, and Florida State held them to 6 points. They held them 4 touchdowns, almost below their average. They beat Louisville, and they won at the Swamp at Florida. Okay? That's a big difference in Texas Tech and Oak State. And I know if you want to compare records and start doing that, that's fine. But if you watched college football this year, that is a big difference. And they did it with their third-string quarterback. They did it with a third stringer. And so I think I'd put Texas in there. It'd be Texas, Georgia, and Bama and Florida State fighting for that 3rd and 4th spot. And I think I'd go Bama, even though Bama's a week removed from barely beating an Auburn team that lost to New Mexico State. It took a miracle. They made up for it against Georgia. The toughest part, though, to me, and this is what the committee had on their plate. This is what was tough. I would be really wrestling with Texas, Alabama, Georgia, because I think Texas would have had the easiest path by far, but they also had one of the two toughest games where they went into Tuscaloosa. They beat Alabama head-to-head.
Yep.
So how could I ever put Alabama in over Texas? I just can't, because so much else is equal. And then with Georgia, how do you put Georgia in? I think Georgia should go, like, I look at Georgia and I look at Texas, and you go, well, how do you put Georgia in over Alabama, who they just lost to on a neutral field? Same record, same conference, one won the championship and beat you. I can't put Georgia in over Alabama. I couldn't put Alabama in over Texas. And to me, they're at if I'm going best team I see, those three are fighting for 2 spots.
Let's set a break here. We'll come back with more. Right now, we're talking about Brian Foley Law. He's a new sponsor. He's been with us about a month, and he's been a subscriber, a longtime listener of this program. He's a board-certified lawyer. Only 7% of attorneys in the state of Texas are that qualified, and Brian is one of those. And, again, we all make mistakes out there. Kids away at college make mistakes. Here's one that I found very interesting. Vape pens can be a problem. Even though you may think they're legal, you never know what's in there. Kids, 19-year-old kid and college student riding with a friend to a football game. Passenger has some vape pens in their backpack when the car is pulled over for speeding. The officer arrests all the occupants in the car because nobody admitted that the vape pens in the backpack belonged to anyone. You need somebody who knows the law inside and out, and that is why I highly suggest you go to a DWI lawyer and, of course, a chief prosecutor. He was a chief prosecutor, I should say, criminal defense lawyer in Brian Foley. Brian Foley Law is the one to take care of you because they will get your life back. Good people can have a bad day. The next day, start by calling a criminal defense lawyer and a DWI lawyer in Brian Foley. If your loved one has been arrested or charged with a crime, you're probably filled with anxiety and fear. Give Brian Foley a call and start the process to take back your life. Brian Foley Law covers Houston, the Woodlands, Conroe, as well as Bryan College Station. Call him up, 936-596-0407. BrianFoleyLaw.com is the website, 936-596-0407.
That'll be our deal.
It's TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We got about 30 seconds. Can we get a text message in, Jared, in that time?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that was an awkward pause.
It says, ask Billy, when considering the top 4 teams, is Georgia a better team than Washington?
Yeah.
Georgia better than Washington? Probably. I think people underestimate Washington because they had a stretch where they were not playing like dominant football, but everybody got on them for barely beating Arizona. And look at Arizona now.
That is it. We'll come back with Buzz Williams next on TexAgs Radio. And we are back, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. David Nuño, Billy Liucci here. Let's go to the Brian Foley Law Hotline because Buzz Williams is joining us. Buzz, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you.
So I would assume a much-needed little bit of a break. I'm sure practice, but just resting the mind and the bodies a little bit from all those travels and all those games in a short period.
We got back Thursday morning at 3. So we took Thursday off, and then we worked Friday morning, and we worked Saturday afternoon, and then we took off yesterday, we had early bird early this morning, and then today is 2 day before, and so we're kind of back to our routine now.
Buzz, do you feel like these early season tournaments, and I'm sure you guys aren't the only team that extended yourself this way, but it just felt a little different to me, and certainly to be away that long, that early in the season. How fired up are you guys to play a couple home games in a row here this week and get the Reed Arena crowd back behind you?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one thing, Liucci, like when you're scheduling those games, there's you think about the opponent, you think about the travel, you think about the exposure, you think about the strength of schedule, you think about a lot of things. I think the one thing that I was immature about is the amount of time that you're not in your gym touching a ball. Yeah. And because we played 8 games in 23 days, and 6 of those 8 were not at home. Yes, there were 6 road games, and that's easy to identify. I think what is lost in that is that's less time in practice as a team, but it's also less time for individual workouts. It's less time for guys to get their shots up on their own. It just changes the rhythm, and you don't have a rhythm because you're spending so much time traveling, and it feels like you're more used to getting on a bus and getting on a plane and getting to a hotel than you are waking up in your own bed and or working in your own gym / office. So I was probably immature in regards to factoring in not only what we were gaining, which was a lot of good stuff, but what we were losing, which, we get back on Thursday and without overstating it, everybody is not just physically tired, they're mentally tired and emotionally tired. And so I think we've managed the 3 days we've been home the right way. And I'm hoping from early bird this morning, I'm hoping that we can get back in the groove that we were in the month of November, going into a really, really important next 10 days.
Just so I feel better about getting woken up this morning before I wanted to by the next door lawn mowing crew. What is early bird on a Monday in Aggie basketball world?
Yeah, thanks for asking. In 2003, I was offered a job by Baylor. I was an assistant coach at Colorado State for Coach Lair, and I knew those guys really well. And the longtime associate head coach at Baylor on Thursday called and said, "Hey, Coach Bliss is going to offer you a job. We'd like you to come back home. We need you to help us," et cetera, et cetera. And I was 29. Actually, I was 30. I was 30. And I said, "Hey, Coach, let me talk to Coach Lair and let me talk to my wife." And he said, "Perfect. Coach Bliss will call you in the morning." So I talked to Coach Lair. I talked to my wife. "Hey, thanks for everything. I'm going to take the job at Baylor." Now it's Friday morning. I'm packing up my office. I'm waiting on them to call. I'm going to get on a plane. I'm coming to Dallas. I'm going to work. And that was when everything began to change. And on Sunday, obviously, they found out that there had been a murder that took place within their team. And so that scarred my heart. And every day following a day off in my 17-year head coaching career, any day following a day off, we have early bird. And the reason why that has taken place is if you work on Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and the last time you see one of your players is after practice, and you don't practice again until Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock, that's a 48-hour span of time. And we never do that. We've never done that anywhere we live. If we take a day off Sunday, we're going to have early bird Monday morning, first thing, before school. Early bird changes. What are we doing in early bird? Are we on the court? Are we in the film room? Are we in the weight room? what are we doing? That changes. But we're never going to miss an early bird. So today was early bird number 18. And that's because we've had 18 off days this year. Okay. And any day following a day off, we're going to have early bird.
Talking to Buzz
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Talking to Buzz Williams here on TexAgs Radio. Buzz, how important is it for Wade to have like a co-pilot at the guard position to take a little bit of the heat off of him when he's the one who's trying to get the offense initiated, having somebody else along his side?
Yeah, I think anytime you're playing the teams that we're playing, it's the second toughest schedule in the country. Obviously, 4 is a really, really good player who initiates and ignites a lot of what we do on both ends of the floor. And I think that it's not just 4, because we could easily say Henry, who's averaging a double-double, is absolutely ginormous to what we're doing. Andy, who has more offensive rebounds than anybody in the country off the bench, so important to what we're doing. Wildens has become a very important cog in what we're doing over the last 3 games. I think that 4 is going to be guarded differently because of his prowess for us offensively. And whether you're a ball handler or a non-ball handler, all of us can help alleviate the pressure from him. And I think, like I've been telling 4, and I say it in front of the team, if we think that 4 is the only player on our team that's going to help us win, we're foolish. We all have to have an impact on winning, and sometimes that means you have the ball, and sometimes that means you don't have the ball. And we also have to remember that half of the time that we play, none of us are going to have the ball. We're going to be playing defense. And so it's the value of those 5 guys on the floor on both ends.
Buzz, I asked you about Henry. I think I've asked about Henry every week on this show, but just continuing to do his thing, the double-doubles, the way he came back in that game against Virginia. Just your thoughts on how he keeps showing up and showing different sides of his game.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's been incredibly important. You know, like, again, for us to have accomplished in the month of November what we did, which person should we anoint the best player? I don't know. Some of the reason why Henry's playing so well is the attention that 4 garners off the ball screen. Like, and so they're all tied together, even though the stat sheet doesn't necessarily say it. And I think that we've got to continue to find ways for other players, not the leading scorer, not the leading rebounder. We've got to continue to find other ways for those guys to help us. Like, I think the job that Jace has been doing on the offensive glass, that gives us more possessions. We're the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country. That's critically important to our success offensively. Okay, well, we need Jace to get an offensive rebound. We need H to fly in there the way he's been. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we can't turn the ball over. So who's turning the ball over? Well, Texas A&M's turning the ball over. Let's not turn the ball over, because the numbers say if we get a shot, we have a really good chance of getting it back. Through 8 games, we've offensive rebounded 49% of our misses. Okay, well, if we're going to shoot 10 balls and we're going to miss 6 of them, the numbers so far say that we're going to get 3 of them back. And so being able to shoot more balls than the opponent, being able to shoot more free throws than the opponent, hopefully make more, those are critical components. Jace helps us on the offensive glass. Well, we need everybody to help our team, specifically Jace. We need to get the offensive rebound. And so we've got to continue to find ways for everybody on the team to impact winning, specific to the recipe that we know through November for now that we have to follow to give us our best chance to win.
Buzz, you kind of talked about, right there, the formula and what the success is going to look like. 8 games in now. I mean, I feel like, what is that? Counting postseason, maybe 20% of the season. A decent chunk already is what's crazy, is what I'm saying. But what is the most encouraging thing that this really challenging opening stretch that you've learned about this basketball team as you get ready for these home games and the holidays?
Well, I think that it's forced all of us whether we're in uniform or shirt and tie. I think it's forced all of us to understand the value of a possession and how critical each possession is. Even if you rewind not just those 8 games, but the 2 exhibition scrimmages, there's been a lot of top 50 net games that we have played. And when you're playing Baylor, when you're playing Texas Tech, when you're playing Florida Atlantic this morning in the net is number 11, Iowa State's number 13, Ohio State's number 20, UVA's 27, SMU's 84. Like, when you're playing that level of competition, I think it heightens the awareness of every person in our gym how important this possession is. And I think our guys have been really mature in absorbing the scouting report from the staff. I think our staff has been phenomenal in boiling it down to the lowest common denominator on, hey, this is what is most important in these possessions. And I think our team has received that, received it in an unfamiliar territory, not on the road in a hotel conference ballroom, on the road at UVA, where the arena and the ambiance and the environment is one of the best in the country. I think they've received it. And with each passing day, with each passing possession, with each passing act, regardless of their name or their age, I think they're accruing wisdom on how important each possession is.
Buzz, how does a coaching adjustment or idea become a reality for you? Like your creative process, you've done on many occasions at different stops, and even here at Texas A&M, kind of changing the way you all go about your business on the court for the success. How does that work in your brain and then actually be applied?
Good question. I could talk about that for a long time. I won't do as well off the top of my head if I could have thought about it. You know, the guy from the Houston Chronicle asked me my first week here, and it was a really good question. He said, everywhere you've been, you've built programs. How do you do that? And then after year 2, after the COVID season, is when in March, men's basketball was the first sport, in essence, to participate in the portal. So men's basketball has been in the portal business longer than any other sport. And then 6 months later is when NIL began. And that fall, the same guy, he said, hey, now how do you build a program with this, with these modifications, with these changes? And I go, it's too early to say because there's not enough data. And so much of anything that I want to participate in, I don't want it to be opinion related. I want it to be in reality. And the one thing that I would say on that is what I've tried to do personally and professionally, both. I've tried to do it hand in hand, is relative to the landscape, what is it that you're convicted by that is right, no matter the climate, for everyone's lives involved? What is that? And whatever those things are, you're not willing to sacrifice. What are those things? And that's hard to figure out. And then whatever is not in that group, of the other things that you have done or that you believe in, but you're not so convicted that you're not going to sacrifice, what is it that you're going to be able to adjust? And I think our staff has been elite in helping me with those categories. Guys, this here, I can't sacrifice this right here, and that's going to be important relative to who we recruit. This right here, I've got to talk to their parents and their mentors before they ever get here, because I can't go away from my conviction that this is right for those young men's lives when they're 30. Now, these things over here, how can we adjust where it's close to what I think is right, but we don't know that for certain. And so that's an ever-changing, evolving thing. But I think the one thing that we haven't changed is what we are convicted that matters the most in their life. And I'm very transparent with our guys, even in recruiting, before I even know them. Jace Carter is a perfect example. hey, now listen, if I say start 10 toes behind the line and I say run to half court and back and baseline and back, do you think you should touch the half court line and the opposite baseline? Yes. Okay, now if you don't touch the half court line or the opposite baseline, do you think I should stop you as the head coach because you didn't touch the line? He goes, yes. I said, okay, now I could give you 40 of those scenarios, and what I'm trying to figure out is, do you want me to coach you, to hold you accountable to be your best, or do we just want that to be on social media that you're a hard worker, but you never touch the line? And I think that's the rub on what is it that you're not going to sacrifice, and then what are you willing to adjust to? And I think once you kind of get a vibe for that, then that helps you in the process of how you want to go about this day by day.
That's a fascinating answer, Buzz. Thank you for sharing that. I love those kind of analytics and the thought process behind it.
It's fun. It's fun watching you adjust.
The one thing that I would say about that, and Liucci, I'm not saying that any of what I said is right.
Right.
That's the first thing, and the second thing is when, as a leader, you decide those things. Before you decide what those things are, you have to be willing for it not to work. Mm-hmm. And that's a really fragile line to walk. I want to do right by my wife. I want to do right by my 4 kids. And I'm saying this in the right tone of voice. I want to do right by our staff. But just as much as I want to do right by our staff that has 93 years of experience with me, as a person, I also want to do right by their wives and their children. And so this line is a very almost invisible line, because when you say these things right here, whatever these things are, I'm not going to sacrifice, you have to be willing to go, hey, if this doesn't work, I'm okay if I'm not employed here anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And so, like, it's easy to talk about it on TexAgs on Monday morning at 10 o'clock, and it sounds like, oh, man, Buzz, those are good words. No, it's like the hardest thing ever, which is why early bird is not really early. Early bird is kind of the afternoon, because you don't sleep very much, because you know this is what I'm convicted that matters in their life. And even if it doesn't work, and I'm 65 and they're 35, they know in my heart, even if it didn't work, I love them, and I was trying to hold them accountable to what I believed was right, whether or not they believed it was right or not. Because in the emotion, hey, when Henry turns his ankle and when Boots is subbed out, now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you still believe in those things, Bud? Because you just lost 2 warriors, and they're over here on the side. You still believe those things? Yeah, I still believe those things, and we're going to play that out against Iowa State. We're going to play that out against UVA. We're going to play that out against DePaul. Whether or not it works or not, I don't know. But being convicted that that's what I believe, even understanding the burden of trying to do right by my family and the other families, that's where it's very difficult.
Buzz, we appreciate it, sir. Thanks so much. We'll see you Wednesday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Buzz Williams there on the Brian Foley Hotline. We'll hit a break. By the way, Billy, before we hit a break, I told Kay Nagley, I want to make sure I get your approval on this.
Okay.
If we get 200 likes by the end of the show, we're close. With 160, she can host one of the days during the holiday break.
Sure.
Yeah, you fine with that?
I would have been fine with it anyway, but let's put a number on it.
Let's put a number on it.
That sounds good to me.
Let's do it. All right.
That, by the way, it's fascinating to listen to Buzz. My next question for Buzz is going to be, what is your method for shutting that mind of his off to sleep? He mentioned sleep and how early bird is not early bird, because I'm picturing him getting up at 3 a.m. and just calling it a night, and you're up like way before the birds, way before the sunrise, and he's just it's like, I want to ask him, like, what do you do to, like, shut it off? Because it doesn't seem like there's an off switch there.
No, he's reading, he's investigating, he's coming up with plans.
I think it's fascinating to watch, as we've talked to him over the years, just to watch him adjust to college basketball, try to adjust his schedule, because it's not like they're Duke or North Carolina or Kansas, where it's just, we're just going to play as tough teams as we can. Everybody wants to come here, and they'll play in our arena and Kentucky. You know, we'll go to all the big showcase tournaments, and I'll have 5 NBA ready. It's not like that, and it's not like that at most places. So I feel like his struggle is pretty similar to a lot. It's been really interesting watching him adjust. It's what I'm most fascinated with Mike Elko. I've watched Slosh do that the last couple of years, just to see how they adjust to the changing landscape in college sports. And in the case of Elko, college football now with what he's going through. Because when you're a head coach and you get there, it's usually like talk to your players. Most of them can't transfer, and get ready for, you know, this mad push for early signing day. Now there's NIL, there's the portal, there's coaching hires and crazy contracts where you can't hire guys. There's social media that's, you know, you lose one coach. We'll talk about that in a minute, obviously. You lose one coach, you lose one player, you got to keep it from snowball. I mean, it is wild what these new coaches walk into. And it's not just Elko, it's everybody. You look at Brian. Remember Brian Kelly a couple years ago at LSU? They had the guy like speaking a different language trying to fit in down there because it just felt like overwhelming. He's doing like TikTok dances and speaking in different dialects and grinding on, oh man, grinding Brian.
All right, we'll hit a break. People are asking where you got that sweater, by the way.
I don't even know.
Is it a sweater?
Yeah, it's like a fleece, whatever.
Fleece? Yeah, they want to know. Well, people are asking. All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back with more. Right now, we're talking Costa Vida. So we told you on Friday that starting this weekend, Costa Vida is going to have a concession stand there at A&M men's and women's basketball games, just to the right of the inside of the main entrance, directly across from sections 113, 112, 213, and 212. In the menu, awesome! You've got chili lime chicken burritos, quesadillas, sweet pork burritos, quesadillas, and chips and queso. By the way, Costa Vida is the place to call for your catering and holiday parties, so let them know how they can help. They're there to help, and Holly, great Aggie, loves this community and brought this idea to College Station for the great food that they have, and also just because what they mean to this area. It's Fresh Mex done the exact right way. Aggie owned and operated, delicious food there in South College Station. 4501 Mills Park Circle in College Station. Again, that is 4501 Mills Park Circle in College Station. Plus, again, at the A&M men's and women's basketball games, Costa Vida going to have a concession stand. Go check it out. It's Costa Vida. TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. We'll get Billy back in here in a moment. Jared at the Angry Elephant Using Social Center, do you see who has joined us on the YouTube page?
I'm looking, surveying.
See if there's a name you might recognize on the chat in the last few chats.
Oh, Connor Cho. Oh, how do I?
I'm not gonna let you do it. Just Choate.
Choate.
Come on, get it right.
And David Nuño also joined in.
I'm always on there.
Yeah, you get a little interesting on there sometimes.
No, I don't.
Oh, yeah. Drop your number, buddy.
Yeah, I just want them.
Let's fight it out.
If you're gonna say bad
if you
words,
come at me, I'm gonna come right back at you.
No, they didn't even come at me. They came at A&M, and I said, just put your phone number on there. We'll call you. We'll get it on there.
What happened, dude?
Nothing. Connor Choate's on the YouTube page watching and commenting, so welcome.
Yeah,
he says I go after people. No, one guy said F,
or when people
Texas
come at
A&M.
you go back.
You'll go back.
Yeah, that's how you're wired the same way.
Yeah, why
but
not?
this guy said something about A&M, and I said, just give me your phone number. We'll call you on the air. Take care of it.
About A&M?
Yeah. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about with some of the changes over the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Let's start with Elijah Robinson moving on to Syracuse to be their DC. That has ripple effects.
We actually haven't talked about that because yesterday we did the pod
without that. Yeah, it hadn't happened
and it
yet.
hadn't happened yet. But I was talking about that it could happen. There were, there are a lot of things out there these days that are just flat ass wrong, and people and one youngster in particular race to our site every time, and 75% of it is wrong. That they run to our site, this is happening, and then there's a contingent that anything positive they hear about A&M, they want to turn into a post on TexAgs and make it into a big deal, and then everybody gets excited, like Elijah Robinson staying, and it's not true. I would caution and say, absorb everything, take in everything. Just remember, I'm going to be wrong sometimes. It's not going to happen a lot. And if you're reading stuff and hearing stuff and I'm holding back on it, there's probably a reason why. Elijah Robinson was never staying. He was always wrestling with a very tough decision, which I presented from the outset. Him leaving is tough for the program, for the players, for the fans. I think there's not a negative thing I can say about that guy as a coach, as a person, as a representative of Texas A&M. There's nothing negative to say. I wouldn't want to if there was one thing versus the 1,000 good things. But one thing that I think, and with portal and with coaches and things like, don't say the whole thing's falling apart when you're going through it's going to be rough, the transition. I mentioned Brian Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
People at LSU were like, what the hell did we do? And that's with a guy that had been a wildly successful head coach at Notre Dame, and they were going, what the heck did we do? I remember, people forget this, when you hired a national championship coach from Florida State, there was a little rough patch there in the early going. And I remember I always joke with Steve. And Steve was parroting what many on the boards were saying. This isn't the ACC. This guy's in over his head. He had it made at Florida State. It was handed to him by Bobby Bowden. He's in over his head recruiting in Texas and in the SEC. Remember, he went to meet with one of the 7-on-7 coaches. There were a lot of things early on, and I know ultimately it didn't work. But it didn't. It's not that it didn't work because Jimbo couldn't handle the job. I mean, in terms of he recruited lights out. He got A&M close to flipping it. It didn't work because they couldn't quite flip it. And there were, over time, there were issues holding the program back that he didn't tend to, right? But Brian Kelly, same way. People were freaking out. It's a problem. It's a problem. People were doing the same thing in Austin with Sark. Look how those two have turned out so far. And again, even at A&M, Jimbo almost got it there. He recovered from that beginning where people were going, what's going on here? This kid might not want to come. This kid might transfer. That's going to happen every time. Losing Elijah is tough. You adjust. So you go hire Sean Spencer the next, that day. That Elko knew probably for a week.
It was possible.
That if I lose him, which is very possible because I'm not going to make him my standalone play calling DC. If I lose him, this is my answer. And I know in one day, in a few hours, people aren't going to gravitate to Sean Spencer like they did Elijah. They didn't gravitate to Elijah the day he was hired from Baylor, having a background at, for a minute at Penn State, then Temple, then Baylor. They didn't gravitate right away. They started to realize, damn, this guy's pretty good. I think you'll do the same thing with Spencer. Now, the key is to have an answer and to have a response. He would have loved to have kept Elijah. Hell, he might have done D tackle and had them both. I don't know. But I'll say this. You're going to lose. You lost a coach. You're going to lose some players as a result, I think, factually. I don't think I'm speculating there. I don't know who. I don't know. I know everyone expects a mass exodus. I don't think it's that. I think it'll stabilize. But you'll lose some guys that hurt. You're going to be like, damn, you just got to replace them. You got to replace them. You have money with as their NIL goes out the door. You have money. You go find better. You go find equivalent. You go find, in some instances, when players are asking for outlandish amounts that they're probably not going to get at other places, that in some instances is going to be way more than their value and production on the field, you go get a 2-for-1. If a guy goes in the portal, I'm making up numbers and asking for $500,000, and he goes, you could spread out $100,000 throughout that position, give 4 guys $25,000 more that deserve it, and go for a couple hundred a year and probably get an all Power 5 conference guy at 2 different positions if you're doing it right. So my point of all that is, as fans, and especially on social media, try not to ride the wave so much because all it does is feed it, especially when it's Aggies doing it. And I'm not saying don't have an opinion. I'm not saying don't wring your hands. I mean, we all wring our hands. And if you don't think we do it behind the scenes, we do. We always, probably way more so than we should. But just to run for the cliffs and scream out, everybody, look, this place is burnt. It's not true. And it's not true. And then whatever effect, whether it's 5% towards the big picture, 1% or 20%, whatever it is, it doesn't help get to the end game, which is to get through the transition period and come out on top. Like, for example, if you lost a veteran player at a position that's not all conference, for whatever they're making in NIL, you could go get another one. Equal or greater value if you're really good at what you're doing. And I know losing Elijah hurts in way more ways than this, but if a couple players go because of that, you can bring guys in. I mean, this has not been a national championship team or program. They're 12-12 the last 2 years. This has not been who are the lay-down first-rounders right now?
Lay down?
Lay down. Who are the first? When you look at this football program, do you go, that's a first-round pick? Not even you, but what are the real people that matter? What are the NFL saying?
Maybe McKinley Jackson?
Is he a first-rounder?
I don't know.
I mean, McKinley's a damn good player. But I'm saying, even if it is McKinley, if it is, and that's great, I hope it is, because that kid poured in a lot to this place. He played hurt. He practiced hurt. He came back. I hope he goes first round. Even if he doesn't, I'm okay with it because I think he's going to have a long NFL career. My point, though, is the program is not where it needs to be. That's why there's a coaching change. The culture is not where it needs to be. I think Jimbo did a job this year of getting it better, but it's why you would lose close games, and part of it is coaching, but part of it is the players too. Just not quite knowing how to win and get over that hump. I mentioned it before. I thought the end of that 2021 season was really costly because 9-1, 10-2 was right there in front of you.
Right.
9-1 and maybe 11-2 and 2 New Year's 6 wins were right there in front of you. Then you just get it. You understand fourth quarter in Oxford, we got through it. A couple weeks later against LSU, we got through it. Got through it in a defensive struggle against Auburn. We got through it in a miracle win at home against Bama. You start to get a culture. They couldn't quite get over that hump. So the culture right now is they're 12-12 in 2 seasons. So I don't think any one guy is bigger than the whole thing of what you're trying to get accomplished. And I don't think any one coach is either. Elijah Robinson would be as close as you get to that. But I see people saying, well, they should have made him the DC. Why wouldn't you? And some people go, well, Elko's the defensive coordinator really anyway. Why would that's not true. And because people were wondering, he didn't call the defenses at Duke on game day. That was Tyler Santucci. So Elijah might end up being a Broyles Award winner in the next couple of years, but as of today, he's never called a defense in a football game. And if you're a head coach and your first hire, when you have a lot of money spent at these coordinator spots, is that the direction you're going to go out of? Now, if he thought this guy is a rock star, lay down, everybody's or do I really want to keep him as a defensive line coach because he's worth his weight in gold, and on down the road he's going to be a terrific head coach, and he might be a great coordinator right now, but he's never called a defensive play. Even in the case of Santucci, he was going to bring back his linebacker coach, and I think Tyler, I said, hey, I'm DC here at Duke.
No reason.
I've already been there doing that, but he's only done it for a year at Duke. That's a lot of inexperience on both sides. That you had to say, like, where do I value experience versus, and the opportunity here versus you don't do it out of fear.
Right.
And in the perfect world, you keep Elijah and maybe he ascends to be your DC in a couple of years, but you don't do it out of fear of what might happen. And sometimes there has to be some kind of leadership and tough decision-making involved, because I've watched it where coaches do things, and I watched it where A&M does things, and they do it out of fear of, like, for Jimbo, well, I can't let this X position coach go because he's got, don't let Damian Craig go because you've got Evan Stewart committed or you've got Cam Coleman committed, and then what happens?
Right.
What's happened at that position over a 5-6 year stretch? That type thinking does not win long term.
All right, let's hit a break here. We'll come back. Got to try to get back on the clock. Right now, we're talking Milliken Reserve farm-to-table community in College Station. Homes, trails, wide open spaces with a mission to build a healthy community around nature, dedicated to the conservation of a healthy community. They certainly have done that. Respect for that native landscape and wildlife. 2,600 acres of open space, farms, trails, and homes out there. They've got an extensive network of trails throughout a wooded landscape that includes walking and equestrian paths, creeks and ponds, and gathering areas. They're committed to maintaining and restoring that natural habitat. They provide a natural setting for people to connect and come together. So when you go there, get the veggies, do it once a week, and then go hiking, go biking, go canoeing, kayaking, equestrian trails out there, the evening yoga, the summer camps, the music festivals, the farmer markets, and the farm tours. You can learn more at millikenreserve.com. And if you're looking to buy a home in this area, check out the creek, the hollow, the meadows. Those are all the neighborhoods there at Milliken Reserve. The hollow, I can tell you all about the hollow. The
hollow is
homes in a private gated community, Billy. That's the hollow.
That's a hollow.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a hollow.
Well, that's the name of the neighborhood. millikenreserve.com. We'll have more. And we're back, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. All right, so I said this at the top of the show, and this is an obvious statement, Billy, but I'd like for you to expand on it. So, yeah, people go in the portal, people leave. That was expected when there's a coaching change. It was expected before the coaching change. That's just where we are in college football. That being said, door opens out, it also opens in, and this staff is a little bit more thirsty, if you will, to bring in guys than we've seen, act a little bit quicker and more aggressively.
Well, this is also the first coaching change we've seen since that portal's been like it is. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you go back, Jimbo was hired, was it 6 years ago, or does that turn into 7 after? Yeah, I mean 6 years ago.
6 years, right around now.
2017. Okay, so 6 years ago, Jimbo Fisher was hired. There was a completely different landscape and climate in terms of the transfer portal. I think back then it was just actually grad transfers, right?
Right.
Other guys had to sit out, so there weren't people going into the portal. I don't even think there was a thing called the portal, right? So completely different day and age, number one. And this staff, I think Elko and the staff he's going to put together. And by the way, I will say this. Everyone, it's just like with the transfers, when they go out and when you assume guys are going out and when guys go in and when guys say they're going in, they don't have to go in. There's a 48-hour. So Walter Nolan might go in, but they're meeting with A&M and Elko today to, before that becomes official and to try to figure out if there's a way to make it work. If there's not, wait to see who comes in. When you're worried, if you think's going in, if a guy goes in, he doesn't have to transfer.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of that's going to happen too in college football. Guys are going to go in and they're going to go kind of test the market. That's where we're at in 2023. That's where this
Your
thing
spot
is.
may get taken at that point.
And that's the other thing. I would tell kids to be real careful with that game. But kids are going to go in and they're going to test the market and they're going to see what's out there. And they're going to get lied to. And they're going to get lied to by other head coaches and other programs and other collectives. And it's just the way of the world. You're putting yourself at risk. You might go in there thinking you're going to get more money. You might make the same. You might make less. You might make a little more but not be happy. Your situation might go from good to not as good. You just don't know. It's the great unknown, and a lot of kids are going to get their feelings hurt in this thing, and some kids are going to get paid. Mm-hmm. Some kids are going to get paid a lot. It's going to be both ways. Not everyone's going to have it good. Not everything is going to be a horror story. But when we're trying to determine what constitutes, a real problem versus what constitutes, versus let's just let it play out. If you and me go in the portal, let's see who steps in. Who do they fill it with? Because I think Elko and the staff are going to be incredibly active in the portal in an attempt to upgrade the roster and to change the culture as quickly as possible. Okay, now, I'm not saying the goal here is not massive turnover. The goal is actually to avoid massive turnover. But there's going to be some turnover. And when there is, you're not going to have your answer immediately as a fan or as someone covering the team. You're not going to have that answer immediately. So wait and see how it kind of plays out. How do things go? Wait and see. Because I don't want it to go this way because I don't want to lose to UCF 45-3 or to South Alabama 33-6. But Oklahoma State had this mass exodus. That wasn't even in a coaching change, and they lost virtually every meaningful player, it felt like, off their team, and they played for a Big 12 title Saturday. They beat their arch rival in Oklahoma. It's different, but my point is they managed to still field a football team and be, by their standards in their conference, pretty damn good season. The guy was coach of the year in the league. So you can, if you just tap brakes, so you lose Elijah Robinson, my question would be, how does Sean Spencer do here? But my other question would be, okay, you're worried about coaches and stuff. Who does Mike Elko hire as his OC and DC? Because to me, that's what really matters.
Yeah.
That's what really matters. When you lose a player, who do you bring in? That doesn't happen immediately. So when the player leaves, the replacement isn't there immediately. Maybe he is on campus, but I'm talking about in terms of your roster, how you adapt and adjust. But again, like I think Mike Elko's the two most important coaching things that happen in this offseason are not it's actually not Elijah. I think that's third. And in a perfect world, he'd have stayed, and that would have been massive. That would have been an enormous decision by E-Rob to say, I'm staying. But good for him, and nothing but the best of luck in your career at Syracuse. But the number one and two most important things, in my opinion, are OC DC. And Elko clearly thinks that DC thing's pretty damn important, so he can be a head coach, which is what he wants to do from Monday to Sunday,
right?
Or Monday to Saturday, whatever it is. That's what he wants to do, is be the head football coach. He doesn't want to be the defensive coordinator. He's not going to be. So 1, 2 are those hires. Let's wait a few days or however long it takes to see who those are before we start figuring out how are we judging this first coaching staff.
All right, we'll finish up here next on TexAgs Radio. Final segment of TexAgs Radio here on a Monday, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. We go back to the Angry Elephant Youth and Social Center. Jared, you read something to me that kind of upset me. Can you read it to Billy?
Yeah, Andy Katz always puts out his Power 36 for basketball, and I'm just looking at it, and I don't see A&M on there. So we go from a ranked team, obviously took a loss or two, but not even top 36. A little bit crazy to me. People in the comments are saying, does he even watch the games? But I don't know. We'll see. I guess time will play out. But I found that to be a little bit wild.
Andy Katz, I'm not the biggest fan of him in college basketball. I just kind of feel like a lot of ways a shill for specific coaches, and there's a couple people in the media that do that. We know who they are in football. Basketball, I've always felt like he was one. I got a taste of that when Mark Turgeon when he left for Maryland. Just kind of going like, what in the hell's going on here? This is national media in your cup. So I'm not never have been, never will be a big fan. So I don't really give a. Are we still on radio?
Yeah.
I don't give a damn about his rankings. But it is interesting because he's a loud voice in it, and you see how much losing games that they'll hold against you. And like it's like what hurts more, does Penn State losing to Bucknell hurt you more than what Ohio State's been doing? Because they look pretty impressive right now. I think at the end of the day it doesn't. I think playing the schedule they play, like look, Memphis losing to Ole Miss. If you beat Memphis on Sunday, it's not quite as much, but Memphis might go out and win their conference by the end of the year and be a 5 seed. It's so early that you don't know anything. All you can do is challenge yourself. Losing on the road to Virginia, whether they finish, obviously one's better than the other, but whether they finish first or fifth in the ACC, losing on the road there doesn't hurt you. It made you a better basketball team, hopefully. Losing to FAU on a neutral site doesn't hurt you. Made you a better basketball team, hopefully. So does A&M have to play better than they've been playing? Yeah. Are they playing better basketball early this year than last year? No question about it. Do they have some quality early wins? Yes, they do. And we don't even know that SMU won't end up being one. Right. But they've beaten SMU, Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa State, 2 Big Ten teams and a Big 12 team and a basketball team that's good usually. I like where they're at.
That's Billy. I'm David. We'll see you mañana. Thanks for watching and listening.